Oh, are we? If we are live. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Fireside Chat with Growth Conference speakers. Man of the day today is Josh Fechter. You may know him. You may know his face from LinkedIn, where he gets hundreds of millions of views with his content. He's also the co-founder of Banff Media, one of the fastest growing growth agencies in the US and probably the world, I would say. His Banff Media started from, Banff is short for Badass Marketers and Founders, which describes this man pretty well right here. It's not just an agency, it was also a Facebook group that really changed my life, actually. Like when I came out of school, started my own startup, failed 6-7 months later, then went to work for Salesflare. As a marketer, zero experience, they had zero marketing. And Josh here recruited me into the Banff group. I think it was from Quora, probably from Quora, one of the many platforms he's been building content and influence on. And it really changed my life, got me into growth marketing, and that's also why I'm here today. So very stoked to have you here. To the watchers, before we jump in, if you're watching, hit the reaction button, leave a comment, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments too. So Josh, are you ready?
I'm ready. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So one of the hardest things putting together marketing materials for the conference was what tagline do I put on Josh? Because it's like you're a super connector, you're a viral storyteller, you're a badass marketer and founder. And I think in the end we went for the Forbes nomination of top innovative founders to watch, together with your co-founder Houston. But I still feel like it's not really what grasps what you actually do. So if someone that doesn't know you asks you like, "Hey, dude, what do you do?" What do you tell them? Like, how do you start explaining what you do?
Yeah, it's so hard, especially because you look at people who have written books and they say like author as their title, right? And I just finished my fifth book, but I don't even put that anywhere because then it just confuses everybody. So I'm still trying to figure that out. The Forbes thing seems to, a lot of people go with it because the one thing that really stands out, you have third-party credibility. So I tend to rock and roll with that the most. But yeah, I mean, I really think my books are more important than the Forbes thing, though. But hey, people want what they want.
Yeah, exactly. So how long have you been running your agency now? Like a year or something?
So I've been running the agency for, I'd say around 8 months, and we've grown pretty fast. Today we have around 25, 26 people, and it's not been easy at all. So at first it was actually relatively easy because we were writing viral LinkedIn content every day. Every time I wrote a post, we'd get leads. Like I was just like, this is amazing. And then LinkedIn eventually cut that off and we had to do something new, right? So what I decided to do was use Houston's skills and outbound. And Houston had built a huge pipeline before when he was the director of marketing for Start Engine. And for people who don't know, Houston's my co-founder. And I would say he has a lot more technical chops than I do. And I'm very good at creating processes, but he's very good at scaling them. So he scaled this outbound channel to like $25 million in pipeline revenue a year ago, just using cold email. So I said, what if we combine this with LinkedIn and also with some more personalization? So that's what we did. We used tools like Phantom Buster that we were talking about earlier, as well as Mailshake and a couple other tools to really do this process at scale. And what we found out is that having a brand name before you do cold email can 4x your reply rate. It's crazy. Like people are like, I know you guys. Like I'm like, this is the best response ever, And we started using that around a month ago to help scale our agency. Granted, content still works and drives probably 70% of our revenue, but making up that other 30%, cold email has been really effective. So been keeping the engine churning, and we're aiming to hit 50 employees by the end of 2018. So one of the things that I noticed is that we do a lot of services, right? We offer basically anything growth marketing we offer, which a lot of people are like, that's the worst idea ever, like niche down. And I've been looking at other companies
it's hard, just growth. It's hard. I know it.
And I look at like a couple other companies like VaynerMedia, Hawk Media, some of these bigger agencies that offer all services, and they've been doing just fine, right? Or at least I hope, because that's if they're not doing fine, they should tell us so we can pivot now. But yeah. So we're chasing this model, and so far it's been working, but it does make me a little bit nervous because the first time I haven't really niched down.
Yeah, what I'm really curious about, if you grow this quickly, like 25 people in 8 months, employees, how do you build culture? Like, how do you keep control of that culture, and how do you make sure the culture is the one you want it to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we hired almost everybody from the community. So Ari is a great example. So Ari was a 20-year-old who posted chatbot guides in my Facebook group. I had no idea how old he was. I thought he was like 26, right? Turns out he had traveled from Africa to the United States, was working as an Uber driver, and was paying for web dev courses as well as chatbot courses. And then he landed a couple of clients, right? But yet, all of a sudden, he had this cool persona online, and I saw him at one of the conferences I was speaking at. He told me he wanted to work for me. And I was like, of course I'll hire you. I thought he was 26, tons of experience, right? And little did I know, he was just a really smart 20-year-old. So we ended up hiring him, and he's never went to college, right? It's so funny. But he's one of our top performers. And you just don't know until they really put themselves out there. So that's what Ari did. And it just shows you that all those traditional barriers, whether it be like college, any type of education hurdle you need to overcome, you can actually just get entirely around that, which is hilarious.
Yeah, man, traveling from Africa to the United States and working your way up from a Uber driver to a chatbot designer is way more valuable and way more learnings than any master's degree you can get, and also multiple. So what's next for BAMF going forward? Are you planning on taking over the world, like maybe coming to Europe in a couple of years or sooner?
Oh man, so that's the goal. And as I was talking with you before we jumped on this live stream, is that we've been trying to figure out a way to hold very exclusive events at scale. And I mean, I haven't been able to lock down the sales funnel for the last 4 to 5 months. Granted, I've also been busy with sales and tons of other things that happen in the company. So I finally figured it out. And so the guide is coming out probably today or tomorrow. So we're used to just holding these huge events, which aren't profitable, to be honest. They're great for like brand awareness, but the direct ROI is really not there. And we want to create more of a tight-knit community of really badass people. So people who are not just like getting into marketing their first step, but people who are top performers and are just crushing it. So to get those people, it takes a lot of skill in designing that funnel. But we finally have something down, and it's almost entirely automated. So stoked for that. So we're going to expand it across the world if it works.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Like, I think your brand is strong enough to grow it further than like beyond the United States. Let's talk about LinkedIn for a minute. So you basically changed the way people use LinkedIn, or you changed the way I use it, and you changed the way people write on it. But whenever I tell people like, hey, you should start writing stories on LinkedIn, they're all like, why? And like, of course I can try to tell them, but what will your answer be? Why is writing on LinkedIn good for your business?
Yeah, one is all your prospects are on LinkedIn, right? They're forced to be on that platform, whether it's CEOs, founders who are trying to recruit new employees, or just trying to message each other via the platform. Most professionals still don't use Facebook as a professional platform. They do all the professional messaging over LinkedIn. And most wealth is not in the younger demographic. It's not in the people who are 25 years and younger, right? And people on Snapchat and people on Instagram. Those are like e-commerce companies, right? If you're a B2B, you have to be on LinkedIn. B2B does not do well on Instagram, does not do well on Snapchat. And the reason is that people are just not that active on that platform. And on LinkedIn, when you're publishing stories, you're being vulnerable. Whenever you're vulnerable, you create more, what I like to say, know, like, and trust factor. So people get to know you better, they like you more, and they trust you more because you're honest, right? Now, if you look through all your LinkedIn connections right now, how much do you know about them, right? Probably nothing. And that's a huge problem. So if you do publish stories about your life, you instantly stand out. And as I like to say, if you have a family and you start publishing stories about your family, well, who's going to be more likely to do business with you? People that have families, right? Because they have that connection. Now, people tend to think that these things hold them back from talking about their lives and working on social media. They say, oh, well, I have kids, I have this, I don't want to showcase any of it. And I'm saying, like, this is gold. This is how people can connect with you. Like if you have a kid, and let's say I had a kid, I would have a stronger connection with you just because I know some of the things you've gone through.
Yeah. So what's broetry?
So broetry was coined by BuzzFeed. I can't, I wish it was another word, but it just happens to be broetry. And broetry was this poetic style of writing. It's basically taking a lot of copywriting principles that have worked for the last 1,000 years. It's been working on Facebook. It's been working on Quora and bringing them over to LinkedIn. And it was this idea that what if you just start telling stories with great copywriting, but are also mobile optimized? So that's the thing that really caught people's attention, was not necessarily how good the copywriting was, but the spacing. There are spaces in between each line when I'll tell these stories on LinkedIn. And people are so used to writing chunky paragraphs. But when you have over 50% of people on LinkedIn viewing it on their mobile phone, it's a lot easier to read if it's spaced out lines, right? So all of a sudden in 2018, this is like a huge deal. And I'm thinking, mobile optimized writing should have been around for years. Like, I don't know why it's such a big deal in 2018. And now there's all these names coming out for it, which is just hilarious because at its principle, I'm literally just writing so people can have an easier time reading it.
Yeah. So writing on LinkedIn, the stories you write with vulnerability, authenticity, showing what's hiding behind the curtain of your business, and in the poetry style, it gets you hundreds of thousands and millions of views. How do you turn them into sales?
Yeah, great question. So you're always tying it back to your company, every story. Now, if you're working with, let's say in B2B and it's larger retainers, and you have maybe 30 touch points before someone actually closes into a sale, a lot of it's just tons and tons of brand awareness. And then all of a sudden someone comes in through LinkedIn, right? And if you just look back on a long enough timeline, you can realize where those leads are coming from. So for us, we know that at least 60% of our leads still come from LinkedIn. So that's why we published all this content. Now, we don't know exactly what posts, but we do know that it works. And I'm trying to remember what the original question was again.
How do you turn the visibility on LinkedIn into sales? So all of the people reading your stories, all of the people engaging with your stories, with the updates you post, how do you push them up to the funnel and up to your business to turn them into a sale?
Yeah, every story is about our company, but we don't talk about our company directly. What we do is tell stories around it. So I'll take a video at my company and say, hey, we're on our rooftop, and I'll talk about culture, how we're trying to inspire our employees. And that will attract people's attention, and they'll think, wow, I'm trying to do that same thing here over at my company. And maybe their company's, they have 50 people in it. It's a software company. And then they go and check out my profile and they're like, wow, Josh has a lot of experience in software and he runs an agency. We need a little agency help. So they reach out to me, right? Yeah. And it's as simple as that. It's not any more complicated. And if you make it any more complicated, you lose. And the reason is that there's only so much time you have to produce content. And you always have to be content focused. If you try to track everything, you're going to have nothing getting out there, which is a huge problem. What most people do is way overcomplicate their sales funnels and make no sales at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so that probably like people read your LinkedIn stories, and if you then cold email them, it's not really a cold email anymore. Like they're not totally cold leads. That's what you were saying before. Like, hey, I know these guys. I've been reading their stories on LinkedIn. So this whole process, would you say it's because you worked at a product company before? Would you say you're now more in the service space? Would you say the funnel is different for a product company than for a service company?
So I was very fortunate to have worked selling similar retainers to what I'm selling now at Banff Media. So when I was the head of growth at GrowthX, which is a VC firm based in SF, they had an educational program that costs around $10,000 to $15,000 a student. And that was the first time I was selling at that price. I was so used to SaaS. I was used to subscription models. All of a sudden I'm like, man, this long sales funnel is crazy. How does this work? And I started doing a lot of events. I started doing a ton of content. And you realize that there's a lot of pain that goes into it and how much brand awareness you have to have. So when I ended up co-founding Banff Media with Houston, I already knew that there's going to be a lot of pain in that elongated sales funnel, right? Because the sales cycle is around maybe a month and a half to 2 months long. And you have 20 touch points with someone before they convert. And just knowing that ahead of time is crazy, but also having dealt with it beforehand gave me a lot of confidence I could do it again. You know, you sort of screw up early on and then you know what not to do, right?
Yeah. That's how life works. You screw up and you learn from it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
All right, maybe let's go to your Facebook group. So for me, it was huge. It's made me everything I am today. And you build an agency up top of it, got employees out of it, got clients out of it. But when you start the Facebook group, were you planning on making money out of it, or why did you start it in the first place?
So I started the Facebook group because I was actually really upset at the event scene in San Francisco. I went to all these startup events and I wasn't learning anything. I said, how come they're not teaching about tactics, like stuff that actually grows startups? They're talking about some communication problems you have with your employees or whatever it may be. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I just want to make enough money so I can have an employee, you know? And so they're talking about all these problems that don't pertain to new startup founders. So what I thought, I was like, okay, well, what if I just create a community online that talked about these issues and where I produced lots of tactics that really help these early startup founders? So that's what I started doing. And at first, it was just 10 of us. It was called San Francisco Growth Hackers. And I took the 10 best growth people I know, put them in the group, and it turned out I was the only one producing any content. And I was like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it anyways. Like, screw it. So I just kept posting every day. And eventually, that did for me is I started learning about all these growth tactics. So I just had to, right? If I wanted to keep posting. So I started learning about cold emailing people at scale. And then I cold emailed around like 50,000 people to join the group early on. Very targeted.
You cold emailed 50,000 people? How?
Yeah, you can't do it again because I already did it, so they'll know.
So you basically you found a loophole in the system, and it's of course when they close the loophole in the system.
Exactly. And that got us around 5,000 members, like really targeted CMOs, marketing managers, founders. We even had like the founder of Eventbrite join. I was like, this is crazy, all from a cold email, right? And then from there, it was just producing good content and word of mouth referrals. We did a couple giveaways early on, but they brought in mostly not that great of members. So relying on referrals really helped.
Yeah. So basically what's fairly unique about you is like you build everything on community, content, and just value in general. Like playing the long game, but it has yielded huge benefits for you. I think you're unique in this. I don't know anyone else who's really doing it at this scale. Why do you think people and companies are staying away from this kind of long-term, sustainable value kind of game that you are playing?
Oh man, it's hard. That's all. There's no other reason besides it's super hard. And honestly, like I accidentally got into it just because I loved growth marketing so much. And I was like, okay, well, I guess if I'm going to be here for a while, I'm going to produce a lot of content around it and try to create some really cool sales funnels. To me, it was never about making money. It's more exciting to me to finish a blog post on a new tactic than it is to probably make like $20,000. Because it's just like how my brain works, right? So that's why when I actually partnered with Houston, who's much more business minded and far more into monetization, we ended up growing the agency really quickly as well as building, some revenue streams. It's because I just didn't care enough. Like I would figure out how to build a revenue stream and then just not do it. And just be like, oh no, let's move on to the next thing.
Do you use paid media in all of this? Like, what's the role of Facebook ads and everything?
Yeah, we remarket all of our LinkedIn connections. We remarket all of our website visitors. I didn't use any Facebook ads to drive anybody to the group. I think I spent like $20 and it was way too expensive. I was like, screw this. Besides that, yeah, just mostly a lot of our marketing. We don't use Facebook ads a ton. And I think that's sort of the magical part is a lot of people think you have to use paid media in order to scale. If you look at the best, and then the best to me are people like Steli Efti, who built an entire company on content marketing, and not just any company, a company in one of the hardest and most competitive spaces, which is CRM.
I know, I've been in
it. As you know, it's extremely competitive. And he made like 300 plus YouTube videos, like 1,000 blog posts. Like I don't even know how much content he put out, all to basically create this incredible company. And that was just him hustling nonstop with content creation. And it's not anything magical. If you look at what he did, it was just pure work.
Yeah, people always like, especially when they look at us growth hackers, they say like, "Hey, what kind of magic trick did you use to get here?" I was like, "Dude, we just hustle, man. We just put in the work, and you can be smart about it and be resourceful about it, but you still have to put in the work. At the end of the day, it's not gonna. There's no shortcuts here." So you said before, like, you cold emailed 50,000 people to get into your group. You also mentioned you couldn't do it anymore today. Like, say everything is crap today, like Facebook deletes your group and everything. How do you start over, like, today?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I learned out of this entire experience was actually just how to be creative. So that sounds so simple, but it's one of the hardest skills for people to lock down. And how that works is a long time ago. I was talking to my friend. I consider him the smartest person I know. I said, "How are you so fucking smart?" Right? And he says, "Read this book," and it's called The Organized Mind. And so I read this book, and what it taught me is that if you basically take everything that's in here and then you put it out into the world, whether writing, through video, is that it creates more space in here to be creative. So when people say, "How do you keep coming up with new ideas?" I say, "Well, I put my ideas out, right, into the world, and then I come up with new ones." And that's what people don't do. They're always afraid to put their ideas out there. But the faster you do that, the faster you come up with more ideas. You just have to believe in the process, right? You got to trust in it. And it may not be there, but you may not see what's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Like this weekend, all I knew is that I have to produce an epic blog post about some growth hack. And I have no idea what that is, right? So it's not like I have any special skill. I just came into the weekend not having a lot here because I'd already put so much out. So I had room to be creative.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. Was a badass marketer and founder, was it what you wanted to be as a little kid? What were you like growing up?
I think as a young kid, I wanted to be, I think first a firefighter, and then I wanted to be a professional football player. I've had way too many injuries, so to say the least. And then after that, I wanted to get into politics. So I ran a political organization on our campus for a while in college. It was called Young Americans for Liberty. And that was pretty cool. That was the first time I was actually president of anything. And we were rebels. We were not Republicans or Democrats. We were the libertarians. Everybody sort of hated us and ignored us, but I loved it. And it's sort of no surprise that I got into growth hacking afterwards. Now that I come to think about it, it's like the field that nobody really wants to touch. Everybody thinks is cool. Oh man!
I would imagine if you were in politics again today, you could use your growth hacking skills to really scale your movement quickly.
Well, that's the ultimate plan. So I think down the line, I'll probably end up running for governor at some point. And like it's crazy because I sort of been planning it for a while. Like, how do I make that possible? And a lot of it comes down to understanding hyper-local marketing. So what I realized is that if you have control over 5 cities in California, especially like the main cities, you're talking about, Silicon Valley, you're talking about LA, San Diego, Sacramento. So you can actually run for governor and succeed relatively well. As long as you have like an email list of around 40, 50K with a high response rate in each one and a lot of good, branding. And to me, I'm like, well, that's totally doable, right? As soon as you start looking at it as a sales funnel, you can win.
Yeah, like these politicians will have no idea what's happening to them, like the ones of the traditional establishment.
I also have a little bit of help because my dad's girlfriend, so they've been together for a while. They're not technically married, but she's a former congresswoman, and she has a lot of power.
That's convenient. Power of a network. So, what was your aha moment? Like going to school, wanting to be a politician, firefighter, and then you were a writer first, right? Like a copywriter, or?
Well, I was a copywriter by necessity. So I started a company in college, and it was an online publication called The Daily Confidential. And at this time, I was probably the worst writer ever. I mean, I was like 3rd grade level writing. It was awful. I don't even know how I made it through college, to be honest. What ended up happening is I was really good at recruiting writers. I found some cool growth hacks on Facebook. You can message anybody as long as you had a friend in common. They had this whole social graph, so you go after interests. And even if you didn't have a friend in common, you could pay $1 at that time to get into their primary inbox. So we recruited 150 writers for this publication. And I was teaching myself web dev, how to like design out the publication and whatnot, create some nice processes for the writers. And then we needed someone to edit their work, which, you know, we had one other editor and we had me. So, and I knew nothing about writing. I just promised them that, like, well, I don't say I promised. I came off as an authority, right? I was like, oh, I run a publication. So they're like, oh, he must be a great writer. I was literally just like growth hacking, right?
It's like if you write 5 ebooks, I'm a 5-time author, even if nobody has ever read my ebook.
That's very true. And then what ended up happening is I had to edit all their work. So I was editing hundreds of articles, and they would reply back to me and say, no, Josh, like, you're actually wrong. And that's how I learned at first. Is that the writers that I brought on board, they were telling me what to do. So that's like jumping in the deep end, right? And then I went to work for another company. I was VP of marketing for a mobile app, and I had no idea how to market a mobile app, and our timeline was super short. And so I ended up starting a blog for them, started writing a lot about job seeking, because our mobile app was mobile app for job seekers. So that was the next step. And then after that, I decided just to keep the skill along. But I'm trying to remember when it really hit me. I think it was when I'd moved back in with my dad after I'd lost a ton of money. This was basically after mobile app company failed, ran out my savings, and I interviewed with Marketo, Dr. Chrono, Looker, and Grammarly. These were all companies when like their very early team, right? They had like 20, 30 people, and now some of them are worth like billions of dollars, right? It's crazy.
Really?
Like Marketo, I think, is $1 billion company.
Yeah, Marketo.
And then Grammarly, I think they're going to be valued at $1 billion pretty soon, which is crazy.
Grammarly is a great company.
So I didn't get the job at any of them. So I ended up just moving back to San Diego with my dad, and then took a job as a copywriter. Did that for around 8 months, and then was writing every day since.
You also read a lot of books when you moved in with your dad, no?
No. So the first book, well, yeah, I was living with my dad when I wrote my first book, which was a book on Facebook marketing. The book was entirely technical. I think around like 300 pages. Something that, unless you really love Facebook marketing, like, you shouldn't read it. Oh, looks like we're lagging out a little bit. I got you? Okay. I think you're back.
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm here.
Awesome. So saying, your first book on Facebook marketing. You also read a lot of books at one point in your life. Like, I remember some posts. The 1 year you read 170 books.
Yeah, that was when I was living with my dad. I was honestly too embarrassed to go see my friends, or to, like, just because all of them had gotten jobs in finance, etc. And I was just like bummed. I had worked for a couple companies, including my own, that had failed, and I just had nothing to show for it. So I was like, what do I do now? I want to be able to go back to my friends and be respectable and just say, like, hey, like, I've done something with my life. So I just started reading a lot, just on self-development, business, psychology, read a few fiction books, and it helped tremendously. I would say just this idea of giving lots of value without expecting anything in return is probably the main thing I learned, as simple as it is. But nobody does it. Like, it's so simple, but if you ask anybody if they do it regularly, like, it's crazy.
It took me a very long time to figure that out. Do something for just create value without expecting anything in return. It's the real gift is in, like, giving itself.
100%. And every time you give, like, you become very happy, and you're always like wondering, like, how do I get happy? And you're always thinking about yourself, but you have to stop thinking about yourself and just, like, provide value to others. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
So the one thing that really strikes me about you is not necessarily the quality of the value you bring, though it is pretty high, but more like the consistency you bring to it. Everywhere, every day I open up the internet, doesn't matter if it's on Quora or on LinkedIn or on Facebook, you're always there. And it's always great stuff. I get inspired every time again. I learn every time again. So I think I have two questions about that. Like, where do you get the drive to keep on doing that? And yeah, how do you keep everything done? Like, how do you scale your time like that?
Oh, I think it's eventually you become really good at it. So creating content doesn't take you as long. I would say paying attention to your habits and routines. So you can do something that's super difficult. Let's say you lay bricks for 20 hours a day, right? Not 20 hours, but like 18 hours a day, right? You just lay bricks. And if you actually take a break from laying bricks, like 4 months in, you'll feel a lot of withdrawal and you'll actually be unhappy because it's so part of your routine and habits that now there's something that's so hard. It's just has become so easy because you're so used to it and it's not there anymore. So even something that seems hard can just become part of your daily routine to the point where it's ingrained in you, right? So if you write every day, eventually if I stop writing, I get withdrawal, right? So you create all these positive routines and positive habits, but consciously knowing that you're doing it to the point where you'll have withdrawal. So that's what keeps you going, right? If I don't produce a great blog post, I'll feel anxiety. It's so real, right? That's because I've been doing it for so long. And I think that's a part of consistency and routines that people don't see is you got to do it long enough to where you have that, that effect that really hurts you if you stop. If you don't have that effect, you haven't been doing it long enough.
How long did it take you before it really got into a habit where you would start feeling withdrawal if you wouldn't do it anymore?
I would say for writing, it's probably took like a couple of years because I was writing a lot. Well, originally I was writing a ton of stuff that I didn't care about, so that didn't help. I was writing for a bunch of online publications, and that was just a whole mess. I didn't like any of the stuff that I was putting out for them, but I didn't also know how to create my own brand online. So it wasn't until I found Quora that I really enjoyed writing, and then it became ingrained in me as routine. So I think Quora was the outlet for that.
Yeah, because the questions that people ask, they trigger creativity, right?
100%. You're answering from personal experience. When I was writing for online publications, I wasn't writing from personal experience. It was like 8 ways to do X, right? Like shit nobody cares about.
Oh, that's so much blog post noise.
I know that I was that person. Like now
That's how I started too, and then I got more into like very actionable playbooks, amongst others, inspired by what was being shared in the BAF community. But where do you keep on getting your juices to keep writing about? Like, because I had a pretty nice run on LinkedIn, like 3-4 posts a week, pretty good engagement. But then, like, I think the last 1-2 months, it's been a disaster, and I also got out of it. So I got withdrawal, let's say, and I struggled to find inspiration to keep on writing about. But you write every day, so where do you keep on drawing inspiration from?
Oh, there's no great answer for it. I think I just sit down and I do it. Like I don't know what I'm going to write about today. I just know it's going to be something. And I'm going to sit down and ask myself enough questions to where some creativity pops. So it's not the answer that people want to hear. Most people want to hear that I have it all planned out and that I have my next 60 days of content just like there, right? It's not true. I literally just make this shit up as I go along. And that scares people because they're like, wow, he's just much better at making shit up than I am. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, I do believe it. Is there something you would say you're not really good
at? Closing. I'm not really good at closing sales. I'm very good because I'm such a nice person and I'm so community oriented that I will literally tell someone every reason they should not go with us while giving them every reason to do that. And I'm just like, Houston looks at me and he's like, dude, come on. He's like, you're such a nice person. And the truth is that I'm always just looking out for the best in people and making sure that when they do work with us, that it is the best fit. Sometimes, though, I can scare away really great fits, and I have to be careful of that. But at the same time, that's why people like me, because they trust me because I do that type of stuff.
Yeah, and if you make it hard, if they are a good fit, but you like scare them away, but they do go with you anyway, it means you two are meant for each other, let's say.
It's true. Like I've read this famous quote. I forgot who it was by, but they said, the one thing you don't see is, let's say you charge high prices compared to what your prospect is looking at. And let's say they're among several different vendors and you charge twice as high. Well, guess what? When he makes more money and their company doubles in revenue, do you think they're going to come back to their original vendors, or they're going to choose you now? They're probably going to choose you now, right?
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
like, man, I can finally afford him, right? That's what they think. And that's how psychology works. Like, there's a couple people who have been out of our price range, and their responses were, right now you can't afford us, or whatever it is, right? And I think to myself, I'm like, man, I got to make enough money to afford them. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah, psychology is highly underrated when it comes to marketing. A lot more people should look into that. This is some question I tend to ask to most people. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird would you say you are?
Oh, I'm super weird. Like, people know me as probably the weirdest person in the office. So some of the things that I do is I wear almost the same clothes every day. People know me because I just wear the BAMF shirt all the time. That's
Steve Jobs also did that. Like, there's a lot of people who do that. A lot of like great people who did that, like inspiring entrepreneurs and stuff.
It's true. Like, I'm so minimalist with my life. Like, when I was out in LA for the first 5 months, all I had was a mattress in my room. That was it. And I just didn't care. People would say, why do you only have a mattress? Like, how do you bring girls back? And I was like, well, you just find people who you get along with, and it works out.
Yeah, if they don't settle for your mattress, you don't want them, right?
They don't settle for a mattress, it's over. But that's what I even had a mattress when I was living up in SF. So I had a mattress for a little over a year, and had a couple girlfriends during that time. None of them cared. So it is what it is.
Great girlfriends. It shows that they care about you and about what you have.
It's true. Yeah. I think that minimalism just scares people because I eat at the same place every day. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is probably like what I create, right? And that's it.
Oh, that's what intrigues me so much. Like, you do the same kind of stuff, but you keep on changing the game and you keep on stepping it up. For example, I really need like changes of environments and different kinds of inputs. I need to read books. If I keep on doing the same stuff every day, I just get like, I don't know, I get boring myself, but you don't get boring. This is not a question. This is just a finding of mine.
So burnout is a very real thing. So I would say the hardest part is how not to burn out and just knowing your outlets. For me, that's exercise, probably going to festivals. Sometimes I'd say like every 4 months, I'll party super hard, like probably for like a week. Like to the whole extent. Like you're talking about like staying out to like 3 or 4 in the morning for a week and just get it out of my system.
I also do that, but more often during the year, not just once a year. But I cannot do it anymore. I'm starting to get too old. Like if I do that twice in a row, I'm just dead. I cannot do a week anymore. Something else. I have one more question. Like one more like stupid in-depth question to get people to know you. Like, what is something that you think that most people in the world disagree on?
Oh, so it's like what's that famous question by Peter Thiel? Or like, what do you believe in?
I think so. I could be like, I picked it up somewhere, but I forgot where it was. But I love the question. So
I believe, well, let's see, that most people disagree on. It's a hard one. Yeah, I can think of a lot of things people agree on that they don't do.
Also fine. It's just
so I would say most people don't realize that almost anybody has the potential to learn anything, because all it takes is for you to invest in something that compounds and for you to learn how to focus. So the reasons why most people don't succeed is, one, is they can't focus. And if you go on the internet today, right, and you're trying to produce content like a blog post, you know how hard it is to fucking write on the internet because you have all these ads and all these tabs open? It's almost impossible. Like every 2 seconds, you're opening something else because your brain needs that dopamine effect, right? It's insane what the internet has done to us. So if you can figure out how to control that, then you can really create anything like in terms of software, blog posts, even e-commerce stores, whatever type of businesses online that you want, but you can't fucking get distracted like everybody else. 99% of people waste 90% of their time online every day when they're trying to do work. And it's insane, but it's true. And it's also, I think one of the hardest things too is having a pivot, and knowing that something is not worth your opportunity cost, even when you've built a routine around it. Like if Quora stops providing me as much value as another channel, such as in-person events, I only have so much time. So I got to replace it, right? And then the last thing would be is always replacing yourself, even with people who are 95% as good as what you do, right? They're not as good, and they never will be. But you still have to replace yourself. Like there's a lot of things I was like, I'm the only person who can do this. That's what I told myself for a long time. And that's what happens to the entrepreneurs who end up failing. I think that's why I ended up failing a lot, is because I always thought I was the only person. And then, we opened this LinkedIn influencer program we have, and I brought in a couple of writers, and one of the writers I think is far better than I am. And to me, I'm just like, oh man, I always thought I'd only be the only one. And then I found him, right? So it was only until I opened myself up to that opportunity and believing that people could be better than me, or I could accept a little less quality work in order to scale, that's, when you actually have your business grow.
Yeah. So I have a question coming in from a friend of mine, actually, who he's running a calendar SaaS, a planning tool. And he asks, what are your current favorite actionable growth tactics for B2B SaaS companies?
Yeah, great question. I would say one is interview at least 150 people in your industry. So that's the first thing I would do, and I would knock that out and try to knock it out in a month, to be honest. It's like, and if you could interview 150 influencers in your industry, like that's going to provide you so much value and so many key relationships. And it sounds so simple, but no one does it. People are just scared, right? And it was great for me because I learned everything that I should be doing when I was doing interviews. So I'd interview, similar to what you're doing right now, I interviewed like tons of founders, heads of growth, and they all gave me these brilliant ideas. And I was learning so fast, right? And there's no other way I would have their attention if I didn't say, hey, I'd love to interview you in front of some people. So that just took my learning curve to an entirely new level. I didn't have to read books anymore. I could just have interviews.
And you have content all the time.
Yeah, and content all the time. It sounds simple, but people are scared to be on camera. People are scared to put themselves out there. And I'm like, if you're scared to do, a live video with somebody, or just, to me, it's like you're screwed as an entrepreneur, right?
And it's a huge opportunity. Like, it's like nobody's doing it. So you want to stand out of the noise, just do it. And then this second question, it's nicely phrased. How do you find the loopholes in the system to grow your business until the whistleblowers rain on your parades? Basically, it's like, I think what he refers to is like, so at the start, when you found these loopholes where you could email 50,000 people at scale, where you could scrape all the data from LinkedIn very easily, all that kind of stuff. And then keep reinventing yourself when those channels get locked down. How do you keep on reinventing yourself? How do you keep on finding the growth hacks?
I think one is staying positive. So one of the hardest things is when something stops working. Like when LinkedIn viral posts stopped working, to me, this was a difference in LinkedIn viral posts. If I could keep going that viral on LinkedIn, getting hundreds of millions of views, I was literally on track to become one of the most well-known business people in the entire United States, maybe in the entire world, if that kept working, right? And to me, as soon as that was taken away, like there's two things I could do. One is jump off a bridge, or two, like focus on being positive and seeing what else scales. And I realized that I was like, wow, that sucks, because the potential and the upside was so huge, and I thought it was going to happen, and now it's not, right? So what can I do next? How can I focus on solutions? So I think you can allow yourself to be mad for 5 minutes, but that's about it. Anything longer than that, you're going to go down a very dark route. And you also have to believe that as good as that loophole was, there's always going to be better ones. And if you don't believe that, you won't keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And all you need is one thing that really scales. So we're creating this guide that I said I'm going to publish today or tomorrow about how to scale exclusive events. If this scales and works out, this is way better than the LinkedIn growth hack. So I think you got to just keep pushing, to be honest. It's as simple as it sounds, but most people don't do that. They get down when something stops working and they give up. And if you have the easiest way to not give up is have employees you have to take care of, because then they depend on you and you're like, oh shit, I got to figure out something else. That makes it a lot easier, to be honest.
So take away every obstacle is an opportunity to grow further. Okay. So let's get to the end. Do you know what you're going to talk about at the conference already?
Oh man, there's been a lot of things that have changed. So if things stop changing, maybe I'll figure it out. But I have some ideas, and yeah, I have this talk around creativity and coming up with innovative ideas and innovative growth hacks that I think people really enjoy. And at the center of everything is really your habits, routines, and how you think. And most people forget that. Like, I'm no different than you. I'm no different than anybody else on the internet for the most part. The only difference is what goes on in here, right? And just reminding people of that, because people are so afraid to take responsibility of their life, and they want to put the blame on everything else except themselves, right? And when you look back on your days, can you actually say, I spent 90% of today creating value for other people, or I spent 90% of my time consuming junk online, right? And most people go through that problem every single day. And it's the person who says, I spend so much of my time wasting it online and I have to change this, and they end up changing it. And now they start creating, is the people who make a huge difference. But very few people are like that.
Yeah. Looking forward to it, man. Like, whatever it's going to be, if they put you on the stage, I have no doubts that it's going to be epic. What is going to make it more epic, though? Will you bring me a Banff t-shirt?
I got you, bro.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna do a last check for possible questions. No new questions. So I think that was it then. Thank you so much for being here. It was great.
Thank you for having me. Well, yeah, much love to everybody who's watching. I appreciate it. And this has been a lot of fun.
Have you been to Europe in your life already?
I've been to Europe. I've been to questionable parts, and I've been to great parts.
What questionable parts?
Some questionable parts are great.
Which parts?
Those are stories just between you and I.
Okay, fine. So we can finish off the broadcast, and then we can talk about the questionable parts of Europe. Okay, so hey guys, if you're watching this on the replay, you can still drop questions. We can still get them somewhere, and maybe put reactions. If you're watching the replay, put a comment that you're watching the replay. And on that, I'm going to say take care, and we'll have a next Fireside Chat next week. I still have to schedule it, though, to be very honest. The Growth Conference will be 7th of June. Be sure to be there. Early bird ticket sales end in 18 days on the 20th of April. And Josh and I expect you there. See you guys. Bye.